Okay, great. I'm Peggy Sattler, MPP for London West, and I am very pleased today to talk about the private members bill that I'm co-sponsoring with my colleague, MPP for Toronto Centre, Kristen Wong-Tam, called the Safe Night Out Act. I will be reintroducing that bill this afternoon. And I am also delighted to be joined today by Harmy Mendoza of the Women Abuse Council of Toronto, also known as Women Act, and Malika Dinani from the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, or USA, who will both be speaking shortly. So this is May, recognized by the Ontario government as Sexual Assault or Sexual Violence Awareness Month. But we have heard from advocates who have been pushing for some time to make the shift from awareness to prevention. And as the month of May draws to an end, my bill, the Safe Night Out Act, shows what prevention can look like. It gives the government a legislative framework to make places where liquor is served safer for the patrons who are most at risk of sexual violence and harassment, who are predominantly female and often young, as well as the workers who serve them. Research shows that the majority of sexual assaults involving drugs or alcohol are perpetrated against women between the ages of 16 and 24, often post-secondary students who were socializing at a club, a bar, a restaurant, a lounge, a party, or another social event immediately before the assault. In many cases, they believe that they were drugged through an alcoholic drink. Some experts actually estimate that alcohol is a factor in more than half of all sexual assaults. But since 90% of sexual assaults are never reported, we can't be sure of the actual number. Although I have introduced this bill before, significant changes have been made since it was first tabled in 2017. The bill's original purpose was to require servers and bartenders to complete sexual violence training as part of their Smart Serve certification, to recognize the signs that a patron may be at risk of sexual violence and how to safely intervene. The revised bill reflects the input that has been received in extensive consultations over the last few years. It no longer references Smart Serve or any specific training module, but instead requires training that is evidence-based and trauma-informed, and is focused on consent. It also expands the training to those who are not required to complete Smart Serve, but are often in situations where they can intervene, such as supervisors, bar owners, and contracted security at nightclubs and bars. Simply mandating training is not enough. We need to make sure that the training is effective and that it includes the right people. The revised bill also recognizes that we can't expect hospitality workers to intervene to keep others safe from sexual violence when they are at high risk themselves. And we all know the rampant sexual harassment that liquor servers face on a daily basis. That is why the bill explicitly adds workplace sexual violence to the Occupational Health and Safety Act and requires both employers and employees to complete approved training on workplace sexual harassment. Finally, the bill directs all license holders to display a sexual violence and harassment policy that clearly sets out how incidents of sexual violence and harassment will be dealt with, whether involving patrons or staff, as well as the resources and supports available in the community for survivors. The Safe Night Out Act is important for women across Ontario, but it has particular meaning in my community. 2 years ago, 30 female students at Western University in London reported being drugged and assaulted during orientation week. which sent shockwaves throughout the sector and highlighted the alarming rise in gender-based violence both on and off post-secondary campuses. And I'm proud of the support my bill has received from London organizations. To truly support survivors, we need prevention, and that is exactly what the Safe Night Out Act does. I now want to invite Harmy Mendoza of the Women Abuse Council of Toronto, Woman Act, to speak about the bill from the perspective of organizations that support survivors of sexual violence.
Thank you, Peggy. Good morning. My name is Harmy Mendoza, and I am the Executive Director of Woman Act. For the past 30 years, Woman Act has been dedicated to eradicating violence against women and advancing gender equity through coordination, education, research, and policy. We firmly believe in mobilizing communities to drive meaningful system change for women. Today, I am proud to stand before you to express our unwavering support for the newly proposed Safe Night Out Act. This critical legislation aligns with our mission and holds immense potential to address sexual violence and harassment in licensed premises effectively. Sexual violence and harassment remain persistent issues, particularly in nighttime environments where they have sadly become accepted as part of the culture. Recognizing the urgency to address this problem comprehensively, the Safe Night Out Act takes significant strides towards creating safer environments. One crucial aspect that sets the Safe Night Act apart is its commitment to trauma-informed approaches. This approach ensures that the training program not only educates, but provides a supportive framework to address the trauma associated with sexual violence and harassment. Additionally, it emphasizes the importance of establishing comprehensive sexual violence and harassment policies within licensed premises. These policies will outline clear procedures for handling incidents, reinforcing the message that sexual violence and harassment are unacceptable. By setting new standards and defining the consequences of such actions, these policies establish a cultural shift and promote safer environments for all. The Safe Night Out Act holds immense significance in combating sexual violence and harassment by integrating trauma-informed practices, comprehensive training, and robust policies. It takes a comprehensive approach to prevent these heinous acts. This bill sends a resounding message that sexual violence and harassment will not be tolerated, empowering establishments, employees, and patrons alike to prioritize safety and respect. We fully endorse this act, recognizing its pivotal role in promoting appropriate responses, mandatory evidence-based training, and created shared responsibility among all stakeholders. We are dedicated to championing this critical legislation as it will contribute to the creation of safer environments for all. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you very much, Harmy. I now want to invite Malika Dinani from USA to share a student perspective on this bill.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us, and a special thank you to MPP Sattler and her team for inviting me to speak today. My name is Malika Dinani, and I'm the Executive Director at the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance. I am pleased to be here to offer our support for the Safe Night Out Act. The post-secondary experience is an exciting time for many students. It is a period of growth, exploration, self-discovery, and independence. When students go out to their local bar or restaurant, they should feel liberated to have fun without their sense of safety being compromised. However, this is not the case. Sexual violence and harassment are rampant in post-secondary communities. When students visit their local establishments, there is a constant fear and anxiety that inhibits them from fully enjoying themselves. Among off-campus locations, almost 50% of unwanted physical contact or sexual relations happened at a restaurant or bar. We also know that this disproportionately impacts women and gender-diverse individuals. 51% of women students reported experiencing sexual harassment at a restaurant or bar, and 47% of gender-diverse students have experienced unwanted sexual behaviors. This is absolutely unacceptable. Incidents of sexual violence and harassment are often underreported, meaning these statistics are likely an inaccurate reflection of the reality of this issue. Approaches to this work must create a system that proactively addresses sexual violence and harassment. Establishments that serve alcohol have a higher likelihood for these incidents, and yet, the staff and personnel that oversee these spaces do not receive adequate training to prevent and respond to it. Systemic policy change that is built through a trauma-informed lens is vital to cultivating a culture where prevention is the norm and where society, as a collective, can better look out for one another to mitigate harm in environments that students should be enjoying. The proposals made in the Safe Night Out Act would better equip staff through policy and training and give them the information they need to monitor their establishments for potential cases of sexual violence and harassment. Students deserve to have a post-secondary experience that is fulfilling, fun, and memorable for the right reasons, not wrought with fear for their safety and well-being. Students have expressed to us the extreme frustration they feel due to a lack of accountability and responses in addressing sexual violence. It is our hope that the Safe Night Out Act gains support from the legislature and takes us one step further to creating a culture that proactively stands against sexual violence and harassment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malika. And now we're going to hear from MPP Kristen Wong-Tam, the member for Toronto Centre, who has actually been championing this issue since she was a councillor with the City of Toronto. And I am very proud to co-sponsor the bill with Kristen today. So, Kristen?
Thank you very much to MPP Sattler, to Harmy, as well as to Malika for their very wise counsel and advice for today. I think a couple of things that I can offer as the official opposition critic for the Attorney General, who has the oversight and purview of the AGCO, is that, when the Smart Serve program was first introduced, it was to really ensure that servers of alcohol in licensed establishments had the tools and the skills that they needed to ensure that they can serve responsibly. And since then, we've seen that in oftentimes places that have alcohol service, we have seen that there has been a dynamic that has emerged that has allowed for alcohol-facilitated sexual assault. And alcohol is the #1 date rape drug that is currently used. And we have to be able to look at it from a lens of safety around harm reduction, but also to ensure that, businesses as well as those that operate those businesses have the ability to ensure a safe environment. The price of going out should not be sexual assault. A fun night out should not end in rape. And all the different tools that can exist to prevent that is something that is absolutely essential. Peggy Sattler is correct. I've been championing this issue since 2016. I introduced a member's motion at Toronto City Council at that time after learning about incidents in my own community in Toronto Centre, where we've seen a number of students who were walking into licensed establishments thinking that they're meeting their friends for a good time and just basically casual socializing. And what they've experienced at the end of the night was not that. It was far from it. They were oftentimes on the receiving end of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and sometimes and unfortunately more often than we'd like to know, sexual violence. All that led to business owners asking what can they do, and I think that it's important to recognize that this bill has the support of business owners as well. It's helpful for them to have the tools that they need so that everyone has the same playing field, and so that therefore it's not just about protecting customers and patrons, which is absolutely critical, but it's also also, of course, protecting the servers, as Peggy and the other speakers have noted, have oftentimes been on the receiving end of the sexual harassment and sexual violence. But it's also about reputation management for those licensed establishments. You do not want to own an establishment that's known for a place that facilitates sexual violence and sexual harassment. You want to be known as a place that's fun, that's a place that's welcoming to everyone, and you want to be known as a place that's responsible in protecting their patrons to ensure that they have a good time without having to pay that heavy and awful price at the end of the night. So this is a piece of legislation that will be placed before the House that has my full support as the opposition critic for the Attorney General, but I also know that it has the support of establishments and licensed establishments. So it has a wide range of support from obviously the students who have been advocating for such a piece of legislation. It has the support of organizations who have been on the front lines of addressing sexual violence and sexual harassment, and it has the support of also the licensed business owners in the communities that I serve and represent. And so it's a real honor to be invited here to speak today. It's a real honor to be a part of the solution, which I think that the Ford government has now an opportunity to lean into, especially since we know that government members will stand up and talk about the need to do more to end sexual violence. They'll talk about the need to do more to raise awareness around sexual harassment, so now they can actually do something and go beyond just words. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions?